One thing people may not know about me is that I absolutely love art history. People don't think that art and science ever blend, but they do more than you would think. And this painting is a prime example. So in 1659, Robert Boyle, who was an Irish chemist and a natural philosopher, which was an early term for the word scientist, unveiled an invention called the pneumatic engine. It was an air pump that would change everything. The device allowed scientists to study what happens to living things when you removed the air that surrounds them, providing the first concrete proof that air, later identified as oxygen, matters, and without it, we die. Sounds pretty basic, but it was foundational and fundamental to our understanding of science and medicine. Some historians would argue that Boyle's pneumatic engine helped shape the scientific revolution. However, there is a darker side to the story that most people don't know. While Boyle was proud of his pneumatic engine, he was also drowning in guilt and wrote a manuscript called the Moral Epistle Concerning Ethics of Treatment of Animals, where he confesses that using the pneumatic engine on animals gave him anguish. He was torn between these two realities. The device fueled his passion for scientific progress, but it also made him realize the sanctity and fragility of life. And Boyle wasn't alone in his crisis. Around the world, people were grappling with the same question. What are we becoming? Science was advancing faster than ever before, but at what cost to our humanity? And here's where the painting comes in. This very famous painting captures this exact moment in history perfectly. The anxiety, the excitement, the moral crisis of the scientific revolution. It's called An Experiment on a Bird in an Air Pump, painted in 1768 by Joseph Wright of Derby, and it's one of the most poignant paintings you'll ever see. The scene depicts a natural philosopher demonstrating Boyle's air pump to an audience. Inside the glass chamber sits a bird slowly dying as the air is pumped out. But here's what makes this painting both brilliant and deeply disturbing. The entire scene is lit by a single candle, and that candlelight shines through a glass bowl that contains a human skull. More on that later. Wright uses chiaroscuro, the dramatic use of light and shadow, to illuminate 10 faces, each showing a different reaction to what they're witnessing, representing how people actually felt about the science at the time. You can almost split the painting in half, with the figures on the right depicting distress and those on the left depicting fascination. Your eye is naturally drawn to the little girl on the right whose face is lit the brightest. She is in clear distress with her arms wrapped tightly around presumably her older sister, who is also so terrified that she can't even bear to look at the scene before her. Comforting them is a man, probably their father, who has his hand pointing towards the contraption as if he's explaining the science behind the device and why they don't need to be afraid. To the very far right is a boy, presumably the brother, who is drawing the curtains with this worried or even fearful look, as if he's trying to shield the world from witnessing the scene within. However, other interpretations see him as excited to see the experiment in contrast to his sisters. Then standing in the very center is the natural philosopher himself. His face is half lit, half in shadow, a perfect visual representation of Boyle's own conflicted feelings toward the pneumatic engine. And just next to him, we see a couple who are more fixated on each other than the experiment, while the boy and man below are entranced by the scientific spectacle. But the figure that most people skip over is arguably the most important figure in the entire painting. It's an older man sitting in the shadows on the right. He is not looking at the experiment or anyone else in the room. He is looking directly at the human skull, contemplating the fragility of life. This is in sharp contrast to the father, the philosopher, the others that are so engrossed in their experiment that the dying bird becomes mere background noise. In fact, if you look closely, you'll see the man on the left has his pocket watch out to see how long it takes the bird to suffocate. Wright managed to portray the entire spectrum of emotions people had towards science during the scientific revolution in a single painting. The young girls represent fear of the unknown, while their brother depicts terror at scientific progression or excitement about where it might lead. The other figures largely show curiosity, trumping compassion for other living beings. Here's the thing that makes this painting so powerful. Wright's core message, in my opinion, still rings true today: that science must be guided by an ethical and humane conscience. You can't spell conscience without science, so why separate them in practice? The only question that remains is if we're the ones watching in horror or the ones holding the pocket watch. If you want to see this painting in person, which I highly recommend, it is currently on display at the National Gallery in London in an exhibition called The Rite of Derby from the Shadows. For more science we're sharing like this, then follow us everywhere at Today I Learned Science at TIL Science.